Hey everybody, this is Tim. I'm the audio-visual technician here at the Mariners Museum. Welcome to today's program with Wisteria Perry, Monsters and Mermaids. We will be broadcasting this over YouTube Live and Zoom. So for our people on YouTube, if you want to ask any questions, go ahead and put your questions in the live chat. We'll be monitoring that, and then we will answer them. We'll have a Q&A session toward the end of the program. So without further ado, Wisteria, take it away.
All right, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Wisteria Perry. I'm the manager of interpretation and community outreach, and I'm very excited to present this program to you. It's one that is probably one of the most popular programs that I teach to groups that are coming into the museum. So I'm very excited to be able to share this with all of you as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen so you all can see my presentation right here. Let me get rid of my face so I'm not looking at myself. All right, so we're gonna start in with Monsters and Mermaids. And as I mentioned, this is one of our more popular programs. And I have to say that we're going to be starting off with a couple of different maps that I want to show you. So hopefully I can get my screen to move. Oh, there we go. All right. So this map here, as you're taking a look at it, is a map of the world. And this is the world of the way that the Europeans knew it. And the people in my department, the Department of Interpretation, we all love maps because there's so many things that you can learn about the world from looking at maps. So one, as you're looking at this, you'll notice that there's only 3 continents. You have one continent here, you have one here, and then you have one here. And the world looks very, very different. You also look at the faces that are around there. This is going to be your compass, because you may notice that the faces actually are blowing. That's going to be the winds that are coming across. So as I mentioned, as a compass, you've got north, south, east, and west. But we're going to come back to this map in just a little bit because I want you guys to take a look at this one. So this is a map that is from 1590, and as you can see there, it is showing the continent of Africa. Now on this map, you are going to find 4 different types of sea monsters. So we've got our first one right there. We've got our second one right there. And then we have our third one right there. So can anybody tell me where you think the 4th one is located? And you can use your chat screens to type in your answers or the Q&A. Where do you think that 4th sector might be? I'm also going to give you a little bit of a hint. I'm going to give you a story about this sea monster. This particular sea monster is one that has no arms, no legs. It does not have a head, but it does have an eye. It will destroy everything in its path, and it's a monster we still deal with to this very day. Okay, have you found it? Well, I want you to take a look down to this corner right here. And I'm going to go over to our chat and let's see if anybody has identified this sea creature. So let's see. All right, so there's my chat box right there. All right, so what you're all looking at is a hurricane. So it's a very different than what people would think about, but it is a sea creature nonetheless. So let's take a closer look at another map. And this is one of my coworker Lauren's favorite photos here because it's kind of looking at the country of Ireland. But what I want you all to do is I want you to take a close look at this sea creature right here in the center, because we're going to take another kind of a different look at it. So if anyone has been to the Mariners Museum, inside of our exploration gallery, we actually have a globe that is very similar to the first map I showed you. This map only shows you the 3 continents that most people at the time period knew about: Europe, Africa, and parts of Asia. But the other thing that this globe is going to show you, it's going to show you that there were belief and sea creatures. So that first picture that I showed you there, we're going to go back real quick, kind of this one right here. Well, you'll see it on this globe right there. And then, of course, you can see that there's other sea creatures, your mermaids, and we're going to talk about those a little bit later. But this sea creature right here has a very special name. It's a half horse, half fish, and it's known as a hippocampus. Now, if you've seen movies like Percy Jackson, you might remember seeing this creature appearing inside of it. But books from the time period tell us a lot about what people believed. So as you're looking at this page here, you'll see up at the top, there's a number of land animals here. There's a couple of horses. There looks like there's a deer here. But then you look in the ocean and you see something a little bit similar. So the idea is that at one point in time, people believed that for every animal that was on the land, its twin lived in the ocean. So if you had a deer on land, then you would have some kind of deer fish in the ocean, half deer, half fish. And you can see that there's a large majority of these creatures here. And sadly, there's a few people who are swimming amongst the sea creatures. Now, this right here is a kind of an insert from a map in our collection here. And this is another type of sea creature. And I've been practicing how to say this. So I apologize if I screw this up a little bit, but it's known as a ichthyocentaur. And I'm going to describe it to you. The ichthyocentaur is from Greek mythology, but it's also from Syrian mythology as well. And it's got an upper body of a man, the 4 quarters of a horse, got the tail of a fish, and then it also has the claws of another type of creature. So this is just one particular one. But still staying with Greek mythology, this is another one that's in our collection here, and there's 2 sea creatures. There's one here, and there's one here. And here's just a really quick description. One of them is with a jagged peak reaching up to the spreading sky, wreathed in a dark cloud that never parts. Inside lives Scylla. It yelps hideously. Her voice is deeper, no deeper than a young puppy's, but she is a fearsome creature. Has 12 feet hanging down, 6 long legs with a grisly head on each of them, and each head with a crown. And then, of course, below, you have Charybdis, which sinks into the depths of the ocean. Let me show you a better picture. So here you're looking at Scylla, which is our 6-headed, very similar to a hydra here. And then you have your Charybdis here. Let me show you an even better picture of Charybdis. So this is another drawing from Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. And you can see the teeth of Scylla around it as they're trying to make their way through and they're being sucked down. But where do these stories come from? These are stories that are shared across the centuries. For instance, the image that you see here is of Saint Brendan, who made a voyage across the Atlantic and landed on a particular island. He and his crew are out to give thanks when all of a sudden this island begins to rumble. And then they noticed that they started to spit water. Was it an island? Or was it this huge, humongous sea creature? Let's go even further. Now, Here's an image. This is a drawing of a few pirates there, and you'll see that they've landed on an island and they've got their treasure out. Now, I'm here to tell you that we're not going to really talk so much about pirates, but they did not bury their treasure. That's a completely different program. But I want you guys to take a look closely at this man right here. You'll see that there's a little question mark next to his face. Well, if you look right at his feet, you'll notice that there's a couple of eyeballs looking back at him from the water. I don't know about y'all, but that would kind of make me question a few things as well. Not realizing that they did not land on an island, they actually landed on top of a humongous sea creature. And we're going to get to what that name of that creature is in just a bit. But back to looking at books and the stories. Again, it was a belief that for every animal on land, its twin is going to live in the ocean. So you have what looks like an elephant here with a fish tail. And then you see this creature here. Now, I asked the question about how these stories get passed along. And I want you to think back thousands of years. Now, even today, we have a number of different types of mariners. We have sailors that go out. But back then, being a mariner, being a sailor was not something that everybody did. So to hear about what's going on with the ocean were stories coming back from those sailors. I want you all to think about a game that you might have played as a child yourself, or you may play with your children or your grandchildren, called telephone. So you would tell somebody one particular thing, and then all of a sudden, as that story got passed, more and more details started getting added on, but it didn't necessarily fit the story that you started with. So you have these tales of unusual creatures that no one's ever seen before, that these stories are being shared. But these sea creatures also pop up on maps. And I want to take a moment and I want to get your ideas as to why you think that sea monsters popped up on maps. So I'm going to head over here to our Q&A and let's see. So it looks like that we've got to scare sailors, possibly. To warn people, ooh, that's a good one. All right, so we've got to scare sailors, we've got to warn people, to protect them from it, to show where the sea creatures are. So you have all these different reasons as to why they are putting out there, because they live there, to keep them away, absolutely. The unknown. Also think about this. If you were a king or a queen, and you're sending out your sailors, your explorers to find new lands for you, do you really want another king or queen taking over your land? Maybe, maybe not. But as you all said, protecting it from others, there's keeping them from exploring their new territories. Absolutely. So you have all these different reasons. And what's interesting is sea monsters are actually on maps all the way up into the early 1800s. There may even be into the 1900s of seeing some of these sea creatures. But what we have found is that some of these sea creatures, the way that the stories have been told, believe it or not, some of them are actually based off of a real living creature. But again, the description of them has changed over time. So let me see if I can move my screen here just for a moment. So let's start off with one of our other creatures here. We're going to start off with this one right here, and you have this. So it looks like we have a unicorn fish. So a half horse, half fish with a very large appendage coming out of the top of its head. Now, there are tons of stories about unicorns, and we haven't been able to prove them, or have we? There is a creature who lives in the ocean, very gentle in nature, that is known as the unicorn of the sea. You've probably guessed already what I'm talking about, and that would be the narwhal. Okay, so you can see that it has its appendage protruding out of its head, not so much on the top of the head like this image here, but you can imagine for sailors who have never seen a creature such as this, that those stories are going to get intertwined, especially if it may be sticking its head above the water. How about this creature here? There's tons of stories throughout the centuries of sea serpents, and you can see that some of them are so big that they're wrapping themselves around ships, and it's a danger that mariners are having to deal with. But this is another creature that, well, there may be an explanation for it. So I want you to think of a particular creature that may be not maybe so much red, maybe just a little bit of red, but is blue, has a large dorsal fin, but looks unlike any other that you've ever seen. It would be this right here. What you're all looking at are images of what's known as the oarfish. And the oarfish is the largest boniest, I guess that's a word, boniest fish that we know of. And the image that you see right down here at the bottom is of a juvenile. It's about 9 to 10 feet long. But oarfish can grow all the way up to almost 100 feet long. On record, let me show you a few pictures. So right here is a picture that was taken in 2001. There was a group of sailors who were out in the Caribbean, I want to say Bermuda, and they were, this oarfish washed up on shore, and they measured it out to be 23 feet long. And if you count the number of sailors here, there's about 13 or 14 of them that are actually holding onto this fish. But that's not the biggest picture that I have to show you. So this one is 23 feet long. This one is 36 inches long. Now, sadly, these fish do not do very well on the surface layer of the ocean. You're going to find more of these fish the further down you go. Okay? Now, as I mentioned, these fish can get up to over 100 feet, but scientists have said in the Guinness Book of World Records right now, the largest that they've been able to fully record and document is 56 inches long. And I worked hard to try to find a picture for you all, but I wasn't able to, I wasn't very successful in doing it. But imagine 56 inches long. We're probably talking about the length of a school bus and a half or so. Moving on to our next one here. I want you to take a look at this fish right here in the center. Notice it's called the orcha. And the description that was mentioned for it is, here seen the orcha, a sea monster that is like the sun when it shines, whose form can hardly be described, except that its skin is soft and its body huge. Now, we see orcha here, and you can see these large teeth protruding from it. But what they're actually describing is this orca right here, also known as a killer whale. But if you look at the very top here, you can see that there is some kind of protrusion here want you to imagine if our orca was on its side and it would have its flipper up at the very top. Okay. And now, as you're looking at this here, what mystical creature do we see now? And I'm going to go over to our chat here and let's see what we have. Let's see. Hold just a second. My chat is not coming up. Oh, there we go. We've got cherub, we've got merman, we've got mer people. You are exactly correct. I see a whale. So there's a number of different sea creatures, but what we're going to focus on are the mermaids. And well, to get in the mood for talking about mermaids, I'm going to put on my little headband right here that we had from another event that we did. All right. So I've got my mermaid tail on and we are ready to talk about mermaids. Now, I've got to tell you that the images that we're going to show you about mermaids, they don't really look the way we're used to seeing them. So let's go. All right. Hold on just a second. My screen is sticking just a little bit. There we go. All right. So what you're looking at here are images throughout time of mer people. So you can see that in this particular description, it's a human body with a fish tail. You notice that they have very large protruding ears and their hands are going to look a little different. Now, there are a number of explorers as they're traveling across the ocean that said that they saw mermaids. In this case, Christopher Columbus said that they were not half as beautiful as they are painted. So he was used to seeing mermaids with long flowing hair, and it is believed that what he actually saw were these gentle creatures, manatees, having a fish-like tail, very humanistic features in the face. They do carry their young in their arms. And imagine if you saw this creature floating near seaweed, it would kind of look like hair. So that's what Columbus is describing. But what he's wishing that he had saw were these type of mermaids. Now, sadly, we haven't been able to establish evidence of mermaids actually existing, but stories about them, as I mentioned, have been throughout every history, and we can probably find mermaid stories across many countries around the world. Now, the images that I'm about to show you, if mermaids existed, this is probably what they might look like. And I always get tons of uhs when I show these pictures. So fair warning. So here we go. And then here's another one right here. So very, very different. Mermaids, most of the stories that you think about, probably the most famous story about the Little Mermaid is the one that was written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1836. And there is a statue to the Little Mermaid in Denmark that sits at the harbor. But what's interesting is Disney's version of the Little Mermaid is very different from the book in which Hans Christian Andersen wrote. Even some of the details are very, very different. So if you ever get the opportunity to read the original version, recommend it highly. You'll get a different point of view. Not to say that I don't love The Little Mermaid, because that's my next slide. So here's a picture of Ariel, and she's with Flounder. So what we're going to do is, if mermaids actually existed, what would they have looked like based on different areas of the ocean, different depths of the ocean. So I want to go to this first image here, and I'd like you all to describe what you see. So I'm going to go to my chat right here. Okay. There we go. So they look very small. I see one with chicken pox, very colorful, different types. They have variety, rainbows, inhuman creatures. Absolutely. So we have Ariel. So she's very, very colorful. There's multiples of her. So if we wanted to look at a part of the ocean that was very, very colorful, that there's lots of light, and you're going to find lots of sea creatures banding together, well, then this image of Ariel would represent part of the ocean that's known as the sunlight zone or the barrier reef. So you see very, very colorful fish. There's lots of them. They're in different sizes, different colors. But watch what happens now. So now Ariel has changed quite a bit. There's still lots of her, but her coloring has changed. Does anyone know what part of the ocean this might represent? It's a part of the ocean that's a little bit light, a little bit dark. Okay, so we're going to go to our chat here. See the depths. I see the twilight zone. Absolutely. So you are looking at Ariel in the twilight zone. So again, still lots of light coming through, but it's slowly starting to get dark, and there's still lots of them. Now, this next slide of Ariel, she's changed a little bit more. All right. Again, this is one that we usually get lots of, what happened to Ariel? Well, that's the question. What exactly happened to Ariel? What part of the ocean would she be in? What do you think she might be representing? Okay, going back to our chat here. Looks like the midnight zone. Are they like coral? And I see a little bit of laughter. So yes, there's a little bit difference to her, but in this particular case, she's representing a particular animal, creature, who lives in the ocean, who is completely white, and yes, has a little bit of weight, but this weight allows this particular creature to survive the harsh climate and temperature of the water. Think about the Arctic, where it's extremely cold, lots of ice, and a lot of the animals living up there are white. So Ariel is representing, and let me see if anybody has mentioned it. Ice cream, narwhal, Greenland shark, wormy things. I like that one. Believe it or not, Ariel is representing, the beluga whale. So again, white, has much more weight, but allows them to survive the extreme cold weather. Okay, now this next picture absolutely floors everybody. But what I want you guys to do, I want you to look at the picture and you can absolutely yell, "Ugh!" And then after you do that, look a little bit closer at Ariel because she tells you a lot. Here we go. Ah! Okay. So now, Take a closer look. What do you notice about her? So I'm heading over to our chat here, and let's see what everybody is saying. Got anglerfish, translucent, I can't say that word. There's teeth, large eyes, anglerfish in the dark zone. You are absolutely correct, or a killer. It could be all the above. So yes, she is representing a anglerfish, and I'm going to show you that picture in a moment. So you can see that her eyes are going to be much bigger, so she can see in the lower depths of the ocean towards the midnight zone, maybe even to the abyssal or the hadal zone. You could also see that she's very translucent, so you can see into her organs. And her organs are usually going to be of a red color because it's a hard color to see the further down you go. So we've got our anglerfish right here. Now our anglerfish, again, very bright eyes, so it can see in the dark. And it's a particular creature that can create its own light. It's called bioluminescence, okay? Now, what's something interesting, I know most people have seen the movie Finding Nemo, but I want everybody to do something for me. I want you all to do like this. Simply just put your hand out just like that. Now, I have you doing this because, believe it or not, the anglerfish will fit in the palm of your hand. It is that small, but it has sharp teeth so that it could find food and eat when it can. So again, an anglerfish, even though when you watch Finding Nemo, he's huge, an anglerfish will fit in the palm of your hand. Now, there are tons of stories from around the world that are very cultural that deal with mermaids and with water spirits. So you have indigenous people on various continents that have their own stories about how how sea life came to the ocean. You have stories from Africa, the Caribbean, even from the Scottish Highlands of water spirits. But one that everybody always points out is that of a kraken. Now, the kraken could be either an octopus or a squid, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But imagine being one of these sailors out in the ocean and running into a gigantic octopus. Now, the octopus are not going to be as big to take down your ship, but you have the giant Pacific octopus that weighs more than 600 pounds. And an octopus is 90% muscle. And what's interesting is because they have no bones, even an octopus that can fit through a hole the size of a quarter. I'm actually going to show that to you in just a moment. Now, there is one type of octopus that is very dangerous to humans, and this is going to be the blue-ringed octopus. And I looked this up this morning, and this is a question that a lot of the kids always ask me. The blue-tailed octopus has venom that is 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide, and that it has enough venom that it could kill 26 people within minutes. This is an octopus that is only 10 inches wide. So we're talking very, very small, but very, very dangerous to humans. Now, as I mentioned, you have really two different creatures that have kind of given the name of kraken, although we're mostly seeing images of octopus. But you can see that there's a number of difference between an octopus and a squid. You got the shape of their head, the size of their eyes. And you could find them in all different parts around the world. There are so many paintings that show the Kraken. We have our movies. This is from Pirates of the Caribbean. But the octopus, when you're looking at it, it has its suckers that's used for feeling, and it has this tiny beak on the very bottom. This is how it is eating its food. And here's just a little bit of a different image here of your squid. Now, as I mentioned, the gigantic octopus, 40 feet long and can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. What I found interesting is that their eye is around the size of a dinner plate. Now, I have another moment for you because I'm actually going to show you an image of a squid eye, and I'm going to show it to you just very, very quickly. So here we go. That is the image of an octopus, of a squid eye. Now, it mentioned that it's the size of a dinner plate. So I'm going to go back for a moment, not to the eye, but I'm going to go back to our screen here, where it said that it's going to be up to 40 feet and the eye. So I pulled out one of my dinner plates here, and I just wanted to kind of get an idea of exactly how big that is. So taking my dinner plate here, I've got a tape measure, and I'm going to tape across here, and let's see what this says. So this particular plate that I'm holding in my hands is 10 inches in diameter. So 10 inches. Could you imagine seeing an eye that size from a squid? Right. Now, we can't really not talk about one other creature, but I want to show you this really cool image video that I was able to find of an octopus who squeezed through a hole the size of a quarter. Once again, they do not have any bones. So you've got the octopus inside this glass container. It's going to stick its tentacles through first. And then watch what it does with its head. Again, no bones, so it's able to flatten its head and squeeze right through. Absolutely amazing. Now, as I mentioned, as we're talking about sea creatures, I can't end this program without talking just a little bit about one particular creature. And we're going to have to head across the pond, they say, and end up right here. We're going to end up in the country of Scotland, and we are going to head to one of the most famous bodies of water. This one right here. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all looking at Lake Ness, better known as Loch Ness. Loch is a Gaelic word that simply means lake. So at the side of this lake, you're going to find this castle here that dates back to about the 13th century. And of course, what sea creature are we talking about? We're talking about the Loch Ness Monster. And there have been images, stories over time of this creature, but sadly, there hasn't been any real proof that this creature actually existed. But looking at some stories from scientists and anthropologists, some of them say that if this creature actually existed, it may have been something very similar to what's known as a plesiosaur. I'm still kind of interested to see if there's actually one of these somewhere in Scotland. I know that there are stories of Chessie, basically a monster in the Chesapeake Bay as well. But sadly, until we're able to 100% with prove that this Loch Ness monster existed, well, I think we're just gonna have to settle for this guy right here. Okay. So what I want to do right now is I want to open it up for questions. So I'm going to head over to our chat, and also hopefully our moderator will also share some other questions from those of you on YouTube Live. All right, so I'm heading over to our chat here, and let's see if that will pop up for me.
So I've got a couple of questions on the Q&A.
Sure.
So here's one. It says, "Why is there a lizard-looking thing at the end of the tail, or near the end of the tail?" So that was in reference to some of your earlier like Greek mythology looking creatures.
So the tail on the end of them, some of them look very similar to a fish tail, or even some of the stories from about dragons. And it really just depends on which culture that you're looking at. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the one image that we're looking at was from Greek and Syrian mythology. So that's something that I'm hoping to dive into a little bit more and do a little bit more research with that.
Great.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We had one from the YouTube live chat, which was kind of answered in the chat, but it says, "Is the venomous octopus like a venomous snake in that it can choose to release its venom?"
That's a very good question. I think what I was reading earlier this morning, it was really one that they use as a defense mechanism against bigger creatures that are trying to eat them. So that was their way of kind of warning them with that. But that's something I would definitely look into and get an answer for you.
Here's another question from the Q&A. What was the earliest documented sighting of a mermaid?
Oh, that's a good question. The earliest that I can remember is probably back during Babylonian times, and there was a particular deity known as Ashtar, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that was very similar to a mermaid. And I'm also, while you're doing that, I'm also looking in the chat, and there was a question, is that made out of Legos? The answer is yes. This is basically a part of Legoland. And I haven't been able to find exactly how many Legos went into building this.
Probably like hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
So we have another one here. What does I'm going to butcher this, Charybdis body look like?
Charybdis?
Charybdis, is that how it is said?
Does it start with a C?
Yeah, Charybdys.
I think that's the Charybdis. From images that I've seen, you're really only looking, you only see the mouth of it. So you're seeing the teeth, you're seeing images of the gut. The best way I can describe it, if anybody is a Star Wars fan, and if you remember back to Return of the Jedi, there was a particular pit that Luke Skywalker was going to be pushed into in that one. So it's a little similar to that, but except out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, was it the Sarlacc pit, I think?
Yeah, I think something like that, yeah.
Nice. So we have another question here from the YouTube live chat. It says, "What is your favorite mythical sea creature?"
Oh, wow. That is a very good one. I think for me, it is a type of mermaid, and it's one that comes from Africa, and her name is Mamawati. She's got a long history in there, but she is one that's as a water spirit who can change forms. So in some forms, she is a beautiful woman. She's carrying a mirror, and other times you would see her as a mermaid. And depending on how you treat her is how she treats you. And she's very much into pretty things and money. But it's one that I'm hoping to do a little bit more research on as well as others. But I would have to definitely say that Mamawati and maybe one other one is one that pops up in the Caribbean, who's known as Yamaya, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she's known as the mother of the ocean. And she's usually wearing 7 veils. And when she comes underwater as a human, the veils are put over her arms, which kind of look like a fishtail. So those would probably be my two favorites.
Awesome. So we have another question here. It says, when you shared the picture of what a mermaid would look like if it was real, why would it look like that?
Well, because again, just like some of the creatures, they're going to adapt to their environment. So the further down that you are going in the ocean, um, your your eyes are going to change so that you can see in the dark. The further down you go, there is less opportunity to get food. So a lot of times, as animals decompose, some of the creatures on the very bottom depths of the ocean are eating um, the remains of those creatures, sometimes in little particles. So they're trying to get food where they can, and again, just to adapt to the environment that's down there for them.
Cool. So it looks like we have somebody with a raised hand.
Okay.
So let me click on that here. All right. Leon, you
Hi.
go ahead.
Hi, Wisteria. You've got some really cool pictures that you've showed in this program. And I was actually kind of wondering, do you have any like good books that maybe have more information on these kinds of things? I don't know if some of these came from books or not, but they seem really, really interesting.
So yes, I do. I can put together a list. They're actually behind me, and I can't get to them right at this moment. But there are a few books, and I do have a few websites that contain some information that we've also gotten images from.
That'd be great.
Thank you for that question. Okay. Anything else that kind of pops up?
So it looks like the last real question we've got here is, do you know how long they think the Loch Ness monster might be?
Oh, that one I do not know, but I love research, so I'll add that to the list and see what we might be able to find.
All right, and then looks like we have one last question here. It says, how big is the narwhal tusk at the museum?
So if memory serves me, I think we actually have two, and I believe one may be about 5 to 6 feet long, and I think the other one is 13 feet long. And one of them is actually on display in our Defending the Seas gallery, where our submarine is, because it's the USS Narwhal.
Great. Well, I think that's pretty much all the big questions, and I think that's about all we have time for.
Fantastic. Well, I do want to thank everybody so much for joining us to learn a little bit about monsters and mermaids. And I hope that you'll come back to us as we're adding more online content. And I do want to share one program here that you can also sign up for. This is called What's Your Story If Artifacts Could Talk? And it's designed for ages 8 to 11 years old. And this is done by our fantastic education team. And they've got several different stories that you can choose from. So I hope that you all join us for more programming in the extreme near future.